So like, I felt like comfortable with her. So she was just like, good morning, Becca. How are you? Everything is going to be great and everything is going to be fine. We'll see you in a bit. And like, so like before I even got into the OR, I felt like I'm in good hands.
Clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now it's time to roll back and start the first case.
On this episode of First Case, we are seeing the OR through the eyes of the patient as we speak with Becca Kinney. Becca is a former sterile processing technician who moved into medical sales and eventually started her own business helping surgical and healthcare companies amplify their voices on LinkedIn by helping them tell their stories in a unique and powerful way. But today, instead of telling the stories of others, Becca is telling her own story as a breast cancer survivor. And Chris, she really does have a powerful experience and a powerful story to share.
It's so important for us to hear this too, because sometimes we have to hyper-focus on the anatomy and the procedure in order to really take care of that patient. But as you're going to learn, we need to recognize the person on the table, even for a minute, because they need us as much as we need them in that moment.
Absolutely. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Becca Kinney.
Hi, I'm Chris Blevins.
And I'm Melanie Perry.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to First Case.
Joining us now is Becca Kinney, a sterile processing technician turned medical sales rep turned entrepreneur. She's a very busy lady, but she's also a breast cancer survivor, and she is joining us today to help us see the OR from the eyes of the patient. So Becca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, you guys. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get to talk to you today.
Thrilled. Yeah.
And you and I actually, Becca, we're connected through another podcast guest we've had on the podcast a few times, Lindsay Brown. And I think that's actually my connection to her is how I got connected to you. So you and I have been connected on LinkedIn for a few years now. You know, a few months ago, you posted on LinkedIn about your cancer journey. And as I was reading your post, and then as it kind of percolated in the back of my head when I was thinking about this season, I really just realized how helpful it is for those of us who see the surgeries every single day to actually hear what it's like from the patient's perspective. So I really just want to jump in and get started and let you tell your story. And honestly, the best place to start is with introducing yourself. So why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who you are?
Perfect. Well, hey guys, I'm Becca. I have worked in, with, or around healthcare for over 16 years. So I started out on the sterile processing side and ultimately started out that way because my mom worked at the hospital as a labor and delivery nurse. And she's like, hey, this department's hiring and they pay more than minimum wage. And I'm like, sweet.
Yes.
I'm in, Mom. I am in. So I got started in sterile processing while I was in college. And when I got my business marketing and international business degree, started to get really bored with sterile processing. I was there for 7 years, which is a marathon time for sterile processing. And I started to get bored and I was like, man, I see these reps coming in all the time. And first of all, I think those bros make a lot of money. They're kind of rude, but like, I think they make a lot of money. And I could like apply my business side to things, like my business degree, if somehow I got onto the rep side. So I could combine my passion for the medical side and the sales side. And so eventually I got on board as a rep and I did that for 8 years. And towards the end of that career, I started seeing a big gap in the market for how media was put online and how all the companies were telling their story in a really boring, quite sterile, no pun on words here, way. And I was like, how can we change this game just a little bit? And so I started my business, and 3 years ago officially stepped away from corporate and into my own business, where I amplify the voice of surgical companies and healthcare consultants on LinkedIn by telling their story in a way that doesn't suck.
And why wouldn't we want to tell our stories in a way that actually is relatable and isn't just cold and sterile and formal and, let's be honest, boring as heck, right?
Boring as heck, yeah. There's enough of that in this world.
There really is. So I love that approach. And I love that you are bringing a more down-to-earth, relatable voice to the companies that you work with, because those are the ones that we relate to when we're on social media anyway. We're going to be drawn to those stories and to the real connections, not the, formal, stuffy stuff anyway. So let's talk then about you and your health and what happened.
Holy cow. Okay, so, I'm a mom, and so the kids are finally old enough now that I was like, okay, it's time to fix up this body. A body takes
sister.
a beating as a mom. So I went to a plastic surgeon that I had met when I was a rep, and I was like, okay, I'm ready for a reduction and a breast lift because my neck hurts, my back hurts. We're never having more kids. It's time. And I was like, woo! And I'd wanted this for 12 years. My daughter's 12. So there we go.
There you go.
And so we had the consultation. We sat down. It was amazing. And he's like, hey, Becca, though, first of all, before I will perform surgery on you, I require a baseline mammogram. And I was like, perfect. No problem. On it. So I was 40. And I was like, all right, I've never had a mammogram, so no big thing. Go in and get the mammogram. They're like, you have dense breast tissue. I was like, great. That seems pretty normal as well. And we need to do a biopsy. Again, this seems pretty normal. And then 5 days before the surgery, I get a call, and it was from pathology. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't seem quite normal. It was like, yes, we found live cancer cells in your biopsy. And I was like, for the love of all that is holy, I wait 12 years for this. And now you're telling me I have cancer. Okay. And he's like, well, Becca, though, good news. It's isolated to your milk ducts, and this is very, very treatable. So, expect a call from your surgeon in the morning. And I was like, okay, no big deal. Oh, no big deal. So my surgeon called me the next morning that I was planning to work with before, and he's like, okay, first of all, I'm so sorry. And I was like, and he was incredible. Very, very great bedside manner, a lot of empathy. And he said, hey, Becca, this is not the end of it. The good news is you were already a patient and you were already on my books. So this just got a whole lot easier. But the whole process changes here. And he's like, all right, tomorrow night I have a webinar available where one of his nurses, who is fantastic, that I got to work with a lot, is going to talk through your different options, from lumpectomy to a single mastectomy to a double mastectomy with a deep flap versus implants. So we're gonna talk you through all the options. So then you have time to walk into this surgical decision educated. And I was like, amazing, thank you. So that gave me a whole lot of I had the oh crap moment, big time. And then I was like, okay, well, this is real life now. So what do I do next? And so popped on the webinar and learned all my options.
Wow. So you seem to be handling this really well now, but I'm sure in that emotional roller coaster that you were experiencing, first of all, I love his approach. And I love the webinar, and, that's your medium, right? Is online. So there's got to be a sense of comfort in, being able to get that information. But did all of that information coming at you, how did that relate to emotionally what that diagnosis did to you in that moment? How did you manage both handling all of it coming at you and your emotional, holy crap moment?
Well, I was a hot mess.
Yeah.
And I was also listening to the webinar at sand volleyball practice for my daughter. So I was very distracted. I'm watching the webinar on my phone while watching my daughter play volleyball. So I was a little distracted, but I had a holy effing crap. You're kidding me. Cancer's supposed to happen to old, unhealthy people that don't take care of their bodies, not healthy young moms who work out 5 days a week and take care of their body. I mean, why? Why me? So there was some anger. There was a lot of fear. A lot of fear. And like a holy balls. But I'm an information gatherer. So I'm like, okay, what's next? What surgical route would I like to take? Because I do love surgery, having been in it and around it.
You're right.
And I was like, well, what will give me the best aesthetic outcome? And also like how will this impact my family's life moving forward? So like if I got a lumpectomy or a single mastectomy, like what are the odds of cancer coming back in 10 years in my other breast? And questions like that. So I decided to take the radical surgical route because I'm young and have a long life to live and a whole lot of goodness left to bring this world. So I'm like, double mastectomy with deep flap reconstruction.
Get it all out.
Get it all out. Get it going.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, speaking of your family, like at what point, I mean, you're a mom, right? Like we were super protective of our babies. Like at what point did family come into it? And I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I'm
a great
very
question.
introverted. Nobody ever believes me, but I'm super introverted and incredibly private when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so like, I'm going to handle this by myself.
Which is funny because I tend to be that way too, even though I look very, very outspoken on social media. And I was not even going to share this. I wasn't even going to share any of this online.
I love how courageous that is.
I wasn't going to. And then one of my girlfriends took a selfie with me at my house 3 days after my mastectomy and said, to one of the bravest women I know, to which I got like 100 messages, like, Becca, what the crap is going on? And I was like, okay, I suppose now it's time to tell my story. But I'll backpedal just a little bit to like even telling my preteen daughter, this is what's up. So I sat her down and I told her. And unfortunately, a year before, her uncle had died of colon cancer. So she hears the word cancer and she starts bawling and screaming, Mom, are you dying? Are you dying? What the? And I'm like, no, baby, the cool part is I'm not. Like it's going to be a long route. And ladies, let me tell you, when I thought it was going to be hard, I did not know it was going to be this hard. In terms of like surgical recovery and sleeping in a recliner and surgical drains, the whole 9 yards, it was much harder than I could have ever fathomed. So it was overwhelming. But my husband was amazing too. He's just like, all right, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah. Your partner in crime, really. I mean, honestly, yeah, thank goodness. Because not all of our patients have that. And, well, so let's talk about your actual like experience in the operating room. So I'm a surgical technologist, and one of the pluses and minuses of our role is the fact that, we don't get a lot of, involvement with our families of our patients, and we don't see you all in the preoperative area. But then also we don't get to see the outcomes typically after the surgery. And so, there's a lot of that we're not a part of, and that can be beneficial because we can silo a little bit, but also that really sucks sometimes because we get super attached to, what we do and what we help with you. But, we know we're very aware of what's going on with you in the surgery and in the operating room. But those moments between when you finally decided what you're going to do, and you just said radical mastectomy, get it all out, right? But so talk to me about your experience coming into the OR, the before anesthesia gets a hold of you and then you don't remember a thing, right? But what stood out to you as you came into our OR, in those final moments? Can you describe that experience?
Yes. So first of all, it was 4 surgeries is how many I've had in the last since May. So, and we're sitting at February. So it hasn't even been a full year. We packed 4 surgeries into that time. So I remember going for a very, very long trail walk the day before my double mastectomy. And the night before my surgery, I slept probably 45 minutes because I was nervous and I was scared. it's so much different being the patient than working in the room.
And we're horrible patients. So we're known for that. Like we know too much, right? Yeah.
We really are. So I was really, 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 really nervous going in. And I was also in advance grieving the loss of a body part, which is an interesting perspective. But, you know, like when it comes to any sexual organs, we are very, our life will be changed when a part of our body is removed. That impacts our relationships. And so I was kind of grieving that loss going in. So I was very, very overwhelmed. But as I walked into pre-op, I'm like, bye, honey. And I was like, I guess next time you see me, I won't have any boobs. And he's like, super cool. Good luck, babe. Like, he didn't know how to respond to that. And so it was pretty funny. Okay, but I will say, like, in pre-op, so my husband was with me as they were doing all the prep, the blood work, you know, the nicotine test, the pregnancy test, all of the normal 5,000 questions. And I'll tell you, like, what was so reassuring to me in each and every surgery is that the nurse or the tech that was, like, doing the pre-op work would talk to me about things that had nothing to do with my surgery. And that was incredibly helpful. Like, tell me about your kids, tell me about your family, what did you guys have for dinner last night? Like, literally anything that would take my mind off of it. And then my husband was like, oh, you live in the same area as we do. Do you know this person? And then I stopped thinking about it. And it was amazing, you know, and then they put on the bear hugger, and then I got warm and cozy, and then, you know, the IV was less uncomfortable, and just that, like, casual conversation was very helpful to me. You know, and then so we say bye, they pushed me back, and I will tell you guys, only for one surgery did they let me not be knocked out before I got into the OR. Because
I was about to say, did they learn a lesson? Or
yes, because Becca's worked in too many ORs. So I'm like looking at the back table setup. I'm looking at like what manufacturer has their surgical booms and their lights, and I'm like, oh, you know, it's like a lot different than the plastic surgery center, the hospital itself. I used to work at the doctor's building when I was a rep, but I was never in a case in here. And they're like, oh my, please just count down.
And versa.
Count down from 10. And I was like,
now push those nerves.
And, you know, I'm like trying to move myself off of the gurney onto the surgical table. And they're like, would you just stop? And I was like, I'm trying to be a helper. And they're like, we don't want you to be a helper.
Yeah.
We don't want you to be a helper. I'm like, my bad. So I'm going to like yank out the IV or something. So they learned, I think that they probably had like you're a pain in the ass patient on the chart that said like, okay, when she comes in for her deep flap, like versa, like let's do this at the get-go. Like this girl needs to be out before she's into the room.
You got just a little extra oomph. Yeah, a little push.
They did. They gave me a little. They're like, it'll be like you're drinking a glass of wine. And I was like, oh no, that was like I drank a bottle of Jack Daniels. Bye-bye now.
So I'm curious, you know, obviously all of us talking to you and listening to this, most of us, you know, we have OR experience. And so we know what it's like when we get in there. And I think part of what feeds our looking around or wanting to help or whatever is that anxiety and that nervousness and, you know, all those things, just because we have no control. Right. And we are typically control driven people. And then when we don't have that control anymore, it leaves us uncomfortable. Right. So how did you feel giving up control and having to submit really to put your life in somebody else's hands?
Honestly, I'll say I felt okay because like when I met with the oncologist, so the first one, it was the oncologist doing the double mastectomy. And when I met with her, she sat me down in her, you know, Cancer Care Northwest. She sat me down in her office and it was her last appointment of the day. So it was 6:00 at night. She walked through all the things, talked to me for over an hour. So kind, so articulate, so detailed. So like, I felt like comfortable with her. So she was just like, good morning, Becca. How are you? Everything is going to be great and everything is going to be fine. We'll see you in a bit. And like, so like before I even got into the OR, I felt like I'm in good hands. Also having worked, you know, I prepped probably thousands of her surgical trays over the years. So I'm like, okay, well, she's got to be legit if she's done this many cases, you know, like, you know. So I think I felt a lot of comfort already walking in to say, okay, obviously, you've got this. So I didn't feel like I needed to be in control, I suppose.
Nice. Well, probably a lot of that was rooted in the fact that somebody took the time to really let you feel heard, right? And to give you the attention and time you needed and answers, right? Because education and knowing what to expect can really take care of a lot of those feelings, right?
It really can, because then at least you feel like you have an anticipated outcome. And knowing like, hey, maybe this won't go perfect, but like, hey, they do so many of these that like, this is just small fry. So first surgery was like a nice warm up for the deep flap. It got me warmed up, and I like got used to like, then, you know, there's some drains, don't use your arms, that kind of thing. I was stubborn. I tried to use my arms. I tried to do all the things. 10 out of 10 do not recommend.
Right.
But
follow those stop instructions, right?
Yeah. So they did that part of the surgery, and then they, you know, removed lymph nodes, made sure that the cancer was gone and removed. So I think I got that phone call that said, you're cancer free. And I was like, because not all women have it that good, right? Not all of them can fix it with surgery. So then I'm like, okay, like I feel good walking into the deep flap knowing like we got this, like, but it was like if you could insert the dun 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 moment, because the deep flap was horrendous.
Really? How come?
The recovery was horrendous. Yeah. So like I remember waking up from the deep flap. So I got to the hospital surgery number 2, 10 days later. So fast forward 10 days. We're going into surgery number 2. And I knew it would be big. I knew they said 14 weeks recovery. And so I'm like, in my overachiever, overactive brain said, 14 weeks, so I'll probably be like 8, right? Cute, so cute. So like went into that one, I was definitely more anxious for that one than the others because I knew it was bigger and harder and
how
scarier.
How long were you in surgery?
11 hours.
Oh, those are so long, yeah.
So long. And so obviously that being under anesthesia that long, I woke up and I felt fine. I'm like, this wasn't all that bad. It's a 3-day hospital stay. So,
Drugs are good.
they were good until they wore off.
Yeah.
And then my husband left because he finally went home for the day. I'm like, just go home. Like, I can sleep tonight. I'm fine. But my bed was tipped back, laying down, barely inclined. Well, anesthesia wore off, nausea kicked in. So everything came out, but I couldn't use arms to sit, and I couldn't use abdomen because I didn't have any control of my abdominal muscles that were sewn back together. So I was aspirating.
Oh no.
That was the scariest moment of my life. I'm not kidding. I was banging on the call button because I couldn't push and I couldn't sit. And I was like too freaked out to push the sidebar button to sit me back up. My brain wasn't there.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't expect it to be. That's normal.
So Lord bless the nurse that came in. She was a doll. So kind. I'm like, I'm so hot. I had STDs on me. There was towels packed on the side of me. There were blankets. And I was like sweating. And it was horrible. And I don't think I've ever been more scared. Yes.
No.
Oh, okay.
I've never been more scared.
Oh,
you know, and then you also then she took the sheet off and I saw what my body looked like and I started bawling.
Oh, yeah.
Because with a flap, you've still got exposed skin, right? And so it doesn't even look like you or your body. And then there's, the cut on the bottom and then the cut here and then your breasts don't look like your breasts. So then I start bawling on top of vomiting.
Oh.
And it was awful. It was it was very, very emotional. But let me tell you, the nurses, the team, everybody was amazing. They're like, oh, this is not our first rodeo, this girl. They knew this was going to happen.
What did they do, or what was it that they were able to say, or what guidance were they able to give to kind of help you process what you were seeing, and that so that you could think, okay, wait a second, this is a step in the process. This is okay. We're moving forward. But what kind of guidance or comfort were they able to provide?
I think like from the nurse and the technician standpoint, they didn't give like a whole lot of like comfort, like, oh, this is how it is, because they also come in once an hour and use the Doppler probe and poke you where it doesn't feel good and make sure that your tissues are alive.
Yeah, right. We need blood flow. Otherwise, the flap's not going to take great. Yeah.
So it was just like their kindness and to keep me comfortable and like, how are you is a dumb question at that point, because I'm not good. I'm not good.
Yeah.
So like, thankfully, they'd obviously done it before, so we didn't say, how are you? It was, is there anything we can do for you? Are you comfortable? Can we get you some ice chips?
Yeah, but that's actually an important thing to think about, because it's just it's just in our culture, right? We see somebody, how are you doing? Well, if we take a minute to think about the fact that, she's not doing okay, that's why she's here. So let's move beyond that question and let's think about what we can ask instead that would actually meet that need or help us to meet her need. Then we can think about it in a bigger sense than just the standard questions we always ask without thinking, something to make it better.
Right. And I think like when I went into the deep flap, they told me, hey, like tomorrow you'll see the PA and he'll be making rounds on your floor. He's going to be in your surgery, but you haven't met him yet. And I'm like, okay. That's cool. All right. And I remember when he came in the next morning and I finally felt a little bit better. I got, some sleep, and he was happy. He was like, just like a ray of sunshine.
Yeah.
Good morning, Becca. How are you? And I was like, hi, I don't know you. he's like, I'm Dr. P's PA. This is what I'm here for. I was here through your whole surgery. You did fantastic. There were no problems, like a lot of reassurance. Let me take a look at you. I'm going to do the Doppler right now. And told me what he was doing the whole time, which was very reassuring. I was just happy. Like, it was nice to see a face that wasn't so serious. Genuinely. Like, I was like, oh my gosh.
A smile goes a long way, but, happiness and a good attitude really is contagious.
And then he was like, yep, your doctor will be here on his rounds before his surgery at 7. So he'll be in about 45 minutes, and he's going to take a look at things too. And I was like, right on. And so then I got to see my surgeon as well after I saw him. So, it was just like that, like, here's what you can expect. Here's what's coming, which I think made it a lot less scary.
And consistency. I think, when they say they're going to do something and then they do it and then it happens. And then, when expectations meet reality, there's comfort in that. Yeah.
So in that phrase we always hear in nursing school too, right? Anticipatory guidance. There's a reason they hammer that into our heads, because it actually helps the patient as they move through the process. I butted into you though, Chris. I'm sorry. So please.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Question.
It's amazing that, after such a long surgery and after such a long experience and then multiple surgeries, like, you had to go home in such a short time. And, nobody actually gets rest in a hospital. So it's almost like I would think in some ways it's a relief, but in some ways also, like, now you're recovering at home. Right. And so, hi, Mom.
What's for dinner?
Yeah. What's for dinner? And I have volleyball practice. Right. Yeah. How does even healing after such a traumatic experience transition to the home life and aftercare that way too?
Horribly. Because, being a business owner too, I still had a business to run. So I was very overwhelmed. Drains were not my friend. There were 6 of them, 2 at the side of my breast, 2 at my sides, 2 at my hips. So there's 0 positions you can sleep in that were comfortable. I was like, I journaled the whole time, and my notes was really helped me in my phone. And, reading back to those notes, I'm like, holy crap, that was horrendous. Like, so I slept in my husband's recliner, and he's 6'5" and 350 pounds. So it's like a big boy recliner. So, cause he's just a big Harley riding dude. And so, we had to, shove pillows on the side of me, and I had to get just the right position. And so, at first I slept upstairs in the TV room, but then I got really sad because I was alone. So he eventually brought the recliner downstairs so that I could be in our bedroom and feel like I was part of
sweet, yeah,
a normal routine, yeah. So it was harder than I could have ever imagined. I thought it would be hard. And then it was harder than that. And it took longer. And like when my surgeon said, do not overdo it, he really meant don't do jack crap.
Did you mind, Becca?
I did decently until like, so I was like 6 weeks post-op, and I'm like, I got this. Like, I'm doing pretty good. Start to feel decent. And my daughter had her last school assembly of elementary school. They put together this whole thing, and I am like, so help me God if I miss this assembly. So last time in elementary school, I'm not missing this. And so I went. Well, I was sitting on bleachers with no back.
Oh.
Do you guys want to know how I was in the emergency room that night with an abdomen full of fluid, and they were aspirating.
Oh.
So like when they said don't do things, what they really meant is don't do anything at all. And if you think about doing something, think again. So
like record the elementary school.
So I would like to visit this, like the mental side was very, very hard. I've never been a depressed person. I've never been an anxious person, but I was depressed and I was angry and I was pissed off at the world. And God bless my husband through this whole process because he was a saint.
Yeah.
So like, yes.
I was going to say, how did you process those feelings and how have you moved through that? Or have you? Are you still working through it?
Well, I would say work in progress, right? I'm back to lifting weights at the gym now 3 days a week, which helps me mentally. But like in that time, I did do some online therapy, which was very helpful. And then like by the time we got to the third surgery, right? So one was in May and now we're in August. So we can fast forward to now we're going to try and make things prettier. We're going to close the flap. We're going to remove some extra skin, and then we're going to fat graft to give you some upper pole fullness. So at this point, like, I just started feeling like me again, and I'm like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah, and I have to have surgery again.
Here we go for round 3. Oh, my God. But I wanted it over with. He's like, we can wait up to a whole year, or like, you can wait. And I was like, I'm not waiting, because otherwise I'm never going to do it. So let's do this. And so I remember this one got to be at the Plastic Surgery Center. So it was a totally different ballgame than the 100 OR hospital in my town, right? Like, incredible. Like, night and day difference, first of all. Can we talk about it?
What's so different? Just because it was a smaller scale?
It was a smaller scale, and then, like, you go into the lower half where they have their OR. They only have, like, 3 little patient rooms, and it's small, and you can't hear other people talking, and you're not hearing other voices, and, just a really, like, fresh and friendly-looking stuff,
right.
Not a tired, I want to shoot myself in the foot stuff.
Yeah,
like, you could literally see the difference in the team. Like, the nurse just came, and she sat down, and she's like, good morning, Becca, how are you? And I was like, I'm good. And she's like, hey, by the way, my friend Michelle from the other local hospital texted me, and I've known her for years, so I'm taking great care of you today. She's like, she saw your Facebook post that you'd be here, and I'm like, oh, well, hello. She's like, so we've got you. And I was like, oh, I thank you.
Nice.
So it's like a spa treatment, really,
I mean, as close to it as you can get, I suppose.
Right? With a scalpel. I mean,
yes, with a scalpel.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that one, like, I specifically remember that nurse telling me a new recipe she was trying for dinner.
Wow.
And she was telling me about this lemon risotto with some veggies that she got from the farmer's market. I remember everything about her telling me that story.
Oh my God, were you NPO at this time? Because I would have been a little angry. I've been a little angry at that moment. Like,
oh yeah, I was hungry.
But
it was fine.
Learning a new recipe takes your mind off of what you're about to do. So I can see the value in talking about something completely different.
Again, huge. Last surgery and this surgery, when somebody took my mind off of what I was about to do, it was very helpful.
Yeah.
And then my surgeon, he came in his amazing plastic surgeon brain, looks at me and he's like, looks deeply at me. For those who can't see what I'm doing, I'm holding up my hands and I'm intensely looking at Melanie and Chris.
Right now.
Yes. And he has his Sharpie or his like marking pen, and he's drawing. And he's like doing all the things, not saying very much,
As you're being drawn on your chest. Right?
Yeah. He's in surgeon mode. But what he did that like split second before surgery is stop, look me dead in the eye, and said, Becca, how are you doing? Do you have any questions for me? And I was like, I'm doing okay. I'm ready for these to all be done. He's like, just one more after this. He's like, I'm hoping I can get everything done in the surgery, but it's probably not going to happen. You're going to have another one. And I was like, thank you for keeping it real.
Good grief.
But it was like, legitimately, like, if I can tell anybody anything, that half a second eye contact moment that says, I care about you as my patient, and we are here for you, game changer. It takes a half a second. So, like, if I can relay any message to clinicians, to technicians, to anybody listening to this, it would be take that moment. That half-second pause is a game changer for your patients.
Absolutely. And that's honestly the best way to wrap up the conversation, even though we haven't made it all the way through your surgical journey yet, because you still mentioned that you had one more surgery. So we're going to have to bring you back and talk more about it later. But as we have come down to the end of this, I always like to just give the mic back to our guest and be like, what else do you want to tell everybody before we go? Although we've kind of hit it right there already. Just pause and take a break. But if there is anything else you want to add to that before we go, I would love to let you continue that thought before we wrap up.
I do think that's a great place to close, to just take a moment to know that your patients are scared. Even if they have worked clinically before, they're scared, they're anxious, they're nervous, and their whole life is about to change. 6 months in a chair, in a recliner, weeks and weeks not driving, on medication, which I don't like taking, not myself. So no, like, your patients are not themselves when they come in. They're like a scared little child. And your moments of pause and your moments of distraction and your moments of clarity where you walk them through the steps change the game for them. So pause.
100%. Thank you so much, Becca. This was a very eye-opening interview, and I really enjoyed getting to talk to you and hear your story.
Yeah, and please come back. We could talk to you for days.
I love it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. That was Becca Kinney sharing her experience on the other side of the knife as a patient fighting breast cancer. And thankfully, she can now say that she is a breast cancer survivor. And I think her story really helps us remember the humanity of the patients that we see every day. They're not just procedures, they're people. And like she said, with feelings, with anxieties, with fears, with nerves, with families they have to go back to and try to take care of, all the things. And we only just see the body part in the square of the blue drape. And sometimes we don't think about that, do we, Chris?
No. And, it's that word human, right? Mm-hmm. Like if just the human in me connects with the human in her. And like she said, even just for the blink of an eye, right? Just a pure second, it can make all the difference. And we should put that in our daily practice immediately.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Connect with your patients. We don't get very much time. We really don't. Surgical techs get even less than our nurses do.
We get a blink of an eye.
In the time we can make our patients feel heard and valued and like we really are there to take care of them as the person that they are. So a great reminder today to put things in perspective, and that is going to do it for today's interview. Tune in next week as we learn how to better provide culturally appropriate care for our Asian patients with Charlie Lynn. On behalf of Chris, myself, and our whole team, thanks for listening to First Case.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of First Case. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to First Case on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for First Case in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@firstcasemedia.com. We look forward to hearing from you.